And welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two friends compulsively study history from memes or from other random sources that we heard blips on history.com. And now we are going to regale each other with the stories we've only recently heard and learned. I am host one. I am Theresa. And that.
Is Angie. I'm host two.
Yeah. And you're here. You're
Hmm.
live. You're with us. Congratulations. You made it.
I
You're
am I am this side of up.
Sometimes that doesn't feel appealing. I'm going to just float that out there. Sometimes the alternative feels incredible.
You know, one of my guys today said he flipped a bucket over to sit on it and then like kicked it into the appropriate position and went, I kicked the bucket.
Ah,
And I was like, that was good. Well done. Good attitude. Good attitude.
I'm here for it.
That's what I said. I was impressed. Oh
Okay.
goodness.
Well, I mean, I feel like I just want to jump in because I think it's my turn, but I know I also have like a hell of a bummer of a story. And so I'm going to do my best to bring it up. I don't think I'm going to get very high on the come up, but I feel like, I don't know, feel like I'm going to do my best.
We got this.
Do we?
Listen, one of us has to have faith right now. It's gonna be
Okay,
me.
you know what? Thank you.
You're
You're the
welcome.
positivity I need in my life because I cannot be trusted.
Allow me to be the chaotic good of your day.
Okay. Um, my story comes from a s- okay, so last year or so I was in Wairika, California, and I was at a public park and they had like kind of a historical a series of boards telling a story about the local area.
Okay.
And I found myself reading it
You said in Wairika?
in Wairika, so in
Okay.
Gold Country.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I originally heard the story there and I was like, oh, wow, that's awful. And didn't trigger the I need to go learn more. And then was listening to an audiobook about Native American history. And they had just one line, just one little bleep in passing. And it didn't link to the previous story, even though it was the same story. But my brain didn't put two and two together. And I was like, wait, wait,
Okay.
wait, wait, go back one, go back one. And then I just started doing a deep dive. And so I'm going to tell you the story about Ishi, the last Yahi Indian.
I know this name.
Do you? What do
I
you know? What do you know?
do. Okay, I'm going back into the very deep recesses of my brain here. So I'm just going to give you a disclaimer that there's a very real chance my information is
Grab with both hands.
convoluted. Yes. He was a child, yeah, and was the last remaining of his people group that I believe was forced to go live with the white men. And kind of what we know about him is his sharing of his culture with them and them trying so hard to make him be white.
I'm going to say you have uh, some bits of fact in there.
Yes, it's been many, many years. So
Okay. Allow me to destroy everything you just said.
fantastic.
My sources: UC Berkeley Archives. Ishi apparently wasn't the last Yahi, according to new evidence from UC Berkeley research archaeologist by Gretchen Kell. California Indian Museum and Cultural Center, Ishi Education. Three podcasts: The Futility Closet, The Last of the Yahi, The Last Archive, The Word for Man is Ishi, and National Park After Dark, not to be confused with National Park Service. The Last of His People, Lassen Volcanic National Park, an article in The Guardian, Battle for the Brain and Soul of Ishi by Christopher Reed on America's Last Wild Man, UC San Francisco, The Story of Ishi, a chronology by Nancy Rockefeller, and UC Berkeley News, Ishi's Life and Legacy. All right, now that I got through that, are we ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Speaking to the
Sorry.
microphone and not the cat's ass.
I had to grab the cat's ass so he'd not pause everything we're doing with his
That's
cute little
that's
butt.
fair. That's fair. So We're going to California in the mid 1800s. So
Okay.
during this time, there's around 80, 90 languages spoken. There's a lot of cultures happening. Okay.
Right.
So kind of narrowing in to California into the foothills of Mount Lassen, there's several indigenous tribes, namely the Yana. Then there's four subgroups of the Yana. 1848, gold's discovered at Sutter's Mill, and California's Indian population is about 150,000. Now,
Dang. I didn't realize we were. How weird to have grown up here and not realize the numbers of the population for when the gold rush struck.
you know, there's a lot in here that I didn't link all together, and then hearing it put together by other historians, I went, oh, my history books kind of left some spots empty.
What? You mean our public school education left information out? That has
I
never
mean,
happened before.
there's a couple paragraphs in here that are going to rock you. Okay. Like this next one. So we have
Oh,
settlers that
nice
come
lead
in,
in.
right? They come in for the gold rush. What do? They push Native Americans out of their homes. They set up farms. The farms pushed native animals out of the area. The cattle depleted the native wildlife or the native plant life that native peoples had access to. The mining fills the waterways with silt, suppressing the salmon in the rivers.
Ugh.
So
We couldn't have done
indirectly,
anything right in that
no,
situation, could we?
I mean, I think we actively tried to do everything wrong. Okay.
That feels fair.
Yeah. Within the first 2 years of the gold rush happening, around 100,000 or two, like basically more than should indigenous people were murdered or killed as a result of the settlers. So either direct or indirect.
More than shouldn't even be a phrase.
Yeah, these are things.
When you think about it, like I get what you mean to say. Like
Yeah. Like,
yeah, but
you know,
the fact that like that's a reality of our not only our own history, but like the history of the world in general.
yeah, 100,000
Yeah.
out of 150,000 in 2 years.
Seems like we
Problematic
were a
is
little bit.
a little even understatement here. Um, but 1850, the first state constitutional convention passes an act for the government and protection of Indians. And then there were other laws that made Indian slavery legal in California.
Right, of course. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Because
that's
why
lovely.
would you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're winding down slavery for other people, so why not spin it up somewhere else?
Because it worked super well the first time with Columbus and his men. We should try it again.
Hey, if you know,
If the shoe fits, I guess.
we're consistent. We're consistent. And then while it wasn't given this name, there's state-sponsored genocide that's put into effect at this time, and that part I won't go into. Just know that it happens and it's feeding into that 100,000 that are being crossed off the census.
Okay.
Now, by 1873, records estimate that only 30,000 indigenous people live throughout the state,
Holy cow.
which is barbarous.
That is an understatement.
Now we're going to zoom from 1873 to the evening of August 29th, 1911. And that's when butchers find a nearly naked man crouching outside a slaughterhouse near Oroville. They call the sheriffs, who approach the man with guns drawn. He didn't resist as he's handcuffed.
Because why would you?
I mean, honestly, I think that's the smart move is just to go quietly. His hair is singed close to his scalp, and this is a sign of mourning for indigenous peoples. The only thing he's wearing is a scrap of fabric presumed to be from a covered wagon, and that's just worn over his shoulders in a poncho-like fashion. Anytime anybody speaks to him, he very in he li- they everything says that he listened intently and then responded in a language that they couldn't understand.
That's heartbreaking.
Meanwhile, the townsfolk hear about this and they hear about this strange man being found. Now, the town is only 4,000 people big. So the sheriffs arrest him. And I have thoughts about this because what was he doing? Aside from just leaning against a fence?
Yeah, what was your reason for arrest? Do we
I
have that?
mean, no reason for arrest. But they approach him with guns drawn and
Ugh, that
handcuff him.
sounds okay. So
And
we
then,
don't change.
no.
Of
And then they put him into a padded cell
course.
because you hear so many details about his need or his obvious actions requiring to be treated like somebody who's having a rough mental breakdown. Now, one report said that his imprisonment was to, quote, protect him from people wanting to see him. Now, given the climate of hostility against Indigenous people, I'm not so sure. So while he's imprisoned, he refused to eat or sleep. So you
Okay.
find somebody that is just a little sketch and you put them in a padded cell and they just stare at you as you shut the door and they don't eat or sleep and stare at you the whole night, which doesn't help his case for being put in a padded cell.
No.
Now, local indigenous people, Mexican, Spaniards, they bring everybody they can think of to come and try to talk to him. And all reports said he listened intently, and when he replied, nobody understood his language.
That's devastating. I know I've already said that, but like the fact that it's captioned with he listened intently.
Yeah.
Like I am prepared to speak to you.
Hmm.
This is how a conversation works, but unfortunately, you can't speak to me.
And you know that's probably what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
They're babbling to him, and he's thinking, yeah, but can you take these handcuffs off?
It's a little uncomfortable in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the story of his arrest spreads to San Francisco, and it's there that two UC Berkeley anthropologists, Alfred Kroger and Thomas Talbot Waterman, hear about it. And this story reminds them of something that they heard from 1835, where there's a woman who is the last member of her tribe, and she's found living alone on San Nicolas Island off the coast of California.
Is this correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't she the story behind Island of Blue Dolphins?
You ask a question like that, and I did not look her up at all.
Oh man, I ruined your side questing. I'm
No,
sorry.
my fixation ran straight linearly down this path.
I am so proud of you because I 100% cannot operate in that way.
Don't get me wrong, I side quested hard later on, and you will know when we hit the timetables.
Okay.
So this is 1911, and Waterman and Krober, they can't help but think about a previous incident. So they're thinking about the 1835 woman, and they're also thinking about something that happened in 1908 when surveyors spotted four Indians in Yahi territory. And the Yahi tribe was presumed to have gone extinct. And when they'd heard about this, they'd mounted an expedition just a year later in 1909, and Waterman and two guides failed to find the group.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So they're like, oh, we heard about this woman. And hey, I wonder if he is Yahi because da da da, we have previous tie-ins here. Now,
This could be useful later
right. Little
or
side
right now.
Little sidebar about the Yahi. The Yahi never adopted guns, but they were one of the most feared tribes for their fighting and hunting skills, and their notoriety as fierce warriors spreads to the settlers who did everything they could to stamp this people group out.
Oh God, I was really hoping, I was really, really hoping that you were going to say who did everything they could to get on their good side.
I don't think we're going to say that phrase at all in any of the subsequent story.
Or any American history when you think about it.
Um, we've got some shining moments. I don't have one here.
Okay.
Okay. So later on, as anthropologists are putting everything together, they are able to confirm that the strange man that just popped up in the historical record in Oroville was one of the men found when they were doing their expedition that they couldn't find. They're able to
Oh,
put the
okay.
pieces together. So just
Okay.
kind of know that that thread's going to get knotted through.
Well,
So
I would like to see that as like a silver lining.
Yeah, but just hold on to that. I mean, I kind of blew the foreshadowing there, so just hold on. The
Okay.
anthropologists, they don't want to waste time, so they send a telegram to the sheriff, and they're like, is the story true or is this news report a hoax? Because we'd love to get on the train and go all the way into the middle of Nowheresville at the foot of Mount Lassen and see for ourselves. But if we get there and find out it's just a guy who fell in a dirt bin and just bonked his head and was talking funky for a week, we don't want to play.
Like that's not what we're getting on the train for.
Yeah. So the sheriff's department confirms this is indeed a legit story. So Krober gets on the plane, Waterman gets on the plane, Waterman gets on the train and goes out there. And he gets there and he sees a man clothed in just a butcher's apron that they gave him at the slaughterhouse. He'd been in jail for 2 days and they hadn't given him an outfit.
So, okay, in my brain, he was wearing the poncho.
Yes. And then they gave
Okay.
him a butcher apron apparently at the slaughterhouse
And
because
at any point in those 2 days, we never thought about getting the man some pants.
no, apparently pants was beyond us.
Okay.
Because us, members of the Cauliflower Coalition, cannot be trusted with thinking about the dignities that we would ascribe to any white people.
I mean,
We're the color of Elmer's glue. We can't be trusted with much.
you know what? Fair.
So Waterman also foregoes thoughts of pants. He whips out a list of Yana words and he's attempting to establish communication with the man. And he's kind of going through word after word without any luck. Finally, he says a word. I'm going to butcher it because I don't speak Yahi. He says Suwini, meaning yellow pine, and he touches the cot in the jail that's made of wood. And the stranger excitedly corrects his pronunciation like some nobody's doing for me. And then he kind of goes, "Oh my gosh, we finally hit it. We got a word." And that's when he realizes that this man is Yahi from the southernmost of the Yana tribes. And the list of words he had was from one of the northern groups. So the words are close, but
But
they're
not the
off.
same.
And they kind of stumble back and forth in a loose pattern, kind of resembling language. And the stranger asked him if he too was a Yahi, and Waterman says yes. Now, obviously, he's not Yahi, but he's using this to establish, like, are you friend of the Yahi?
Okay, yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
You know, like, you know, if you said American, oh, I could be American, whatever you said.
Okay.
That's close enough. Like, okay, we've got a loose pattern here.
I would like to be invited to the cookout.
Yeah, hmm I know my place. I will bring drinks.
I'll bring the paper plates.
Yeah, I will clean up afterwards. Um,
Hmm.
so Waterman offers for the stranger to come to the campus anthropology museum, and that's at the time in San Francisco. Surprisingly, the museum that Waterman works at is designed for house guests, which that part sounds like
Fantastic.
a dream.
Hmm.
Apparently, the museum always had at least two employees staying there, and it often housed indigenous people who were coming in to aid in the anthropology work.
Oh, okay. I like this.
Yeah, so this sounds possible, and kind. Of course, they have to go through Bureau of Indian Affairs because they are
Why?
not citizens, and the stranger agrees to go with Waterman. And so it's like, okay, I'll take over his custody because he is held in custody. Um, at the museum, the man met the other anthropologist, Krober, and describes the stranger as outgoing, but says that he startles easily and that despite he always seemed alone, despite the number of people who are around him,
Okay.
which checks and is probably one of the more crushing descriptions of a human I've ever read.
Hmm. I was just thinking that, but I've already said that's sad
Hmm.
multiple times, so I opted for quiet.
Yeah, that's a safe bet. Reporters want to know this man's name, and Krober knows that it's rude to ask. And this reminds me of episode 80, and I feel like I learned a bit of nuance with this next chunk I'm about to say.
Okay.
The man replied that he'd been alone so long that there had been no one to name him.
Oh,
Now, that translation could be wrong, and it could be read along more the lines of, there's nobody left who remembers my name.
either or. That's both.
Yeah.
That's heartbreaking either way.
Now, under pressure from reporters who really want to know the stranger's name, Alfred Krober calls him Ishi, which just means man in Yana.
So it's like
So,
being named Guy.
or dude.
Okay, that'd be actually kind of awesome.
I mean, it's
For us, that would be awesome.
I say dude all the time, but I feel like to have my identity stripped back to dude would be hard.
Unless when you're thinking dude, you're thinking of the dude, in which case,
I mean, maybe. Um, Now there's a quote that's I'll explain where the quote comes later on, but it says a California Indian almost never speaks his own name. And that was written by Krober's wife, and she ends up writing a book that's an account of Ishi. Already using it, but rarely with those who already know it, he would never tell it and reply to a direct question.
okay, that's a really interesting bit of it, and that's specific to California.
I don't think it can't be like it says that it's specific to California Indians, but it feels like it's such a strong tie-in to Pocahontas or Matoaka
Mm-hmm.
from episode 80 that I feel like I now understand a little bit more about why she didn't go by any of her, like she didn't go by Matoaka or even the other name that we have for her, but we know her as
Yeah,
Pocahontas or Rebecca.
that makes me sad.
Yeah, stay tuned, right? Like, I'm not promising sunshine and rainbows with this one.
But you know what? You're not wrong. It's a really important story, and it should be shared.
This next paragraph is going to make you want to punch somebody. Like this next, honestly, you're going to want to punch a capitalist because entrepreneurs wanted to buy Ishi or use him as a sideshow or etc.
Because that's an acceptable way to treat another human being.
Uh-huh. But the museum turned him down. But eventually on Sundays for a couple hours each week, Ishi would display his bow making skills, making arrowheads. He'd make fires. He would be put on display.
I would hope that it would be willingly on his part.
Maybe, but I think that there's too much of a power dynamic to really say that he had enough say to make it seem
Yeah.
like full consent.
Autonomy for himself.
Yeah, I don't see much agency, or I don't see enough
Yeah.
agency, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm also applying my lens now and not being there or seeing the response. For all I know, this was his idea. I doubt it, but I'm
Right.
applying my
Well, I
lenses.
mean, in this case, it's really hard not to apply our own world to his,
Yeah.
right?
Now, Waterman and Kroberg, they dig in and they really try to learn more about Ishi and try to get to learn more about his story. From what they understand, he's born in the 1960s, likely in the early 1960s.
The 1860s.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. He's
You're
not a time
welcome.
traveler. Um,
This
1860.
story is a hoax brought to you by Theresa.
I mean, look, I can't be trusted with reading a number properly aloud. I can't. My brain's going to
Story of
put
my
a
life.
different number there. But you are here to catch me every step of the way, and that is why we do this together.
Mm-hmm. We got you.
1861. Like, so I think at this point I'm going to stop from, he's born roughly in the 1860s, and then here's a chronology of a timeline. Okay.
Okay.
So 1861, the Yana people raid cattle and mining camps to survive because they're looking for food that has been utterly wiped off the face of this planet by the settlers. Only,
Oh, yes, this checks.
yeah. So it's during this year that they estimate only about 50 southern, central, and northern Yana people remain alive. And
Okay.
it's during this, I think it's during this raid that a man named Robert Anderson gets tagged in. Now, he's a private citizen who had taken it upon himself to hunt and track down native peoples. We're talking men, women, and
Mm,
children.
I
He's
hate him already.
recorded with wearing their scalps as trophies. And as dark as this is, I'm leaving out a lot of the details that I learned that will now live rent free in my brain. And I hate that Robert Anderson is a very common name that I will probably hear about a live person, probably in my area, and then have to think about this.
Are you related to the Robert Anderson?
I'm just going to throat punch you just because
Sorry,
you share a name. It's
like it
honestly, I'm compelled. The power of Christ compels me.
it's of the kingdom.
Yeah. 1863 in July, there's the Hence Rance Resolution, which orders all Indians are removed from Butte County within 30 days.
Yeah, we're great at that.
Yeah. 1865, there's about 30 Yahi, including Ishi's family, and they survive the Three Knolls massacre and they hide in the wilderness. There's four cattlemen who kill 15 of them, and the other hide for the next 40 years in a small village 500 feet above Deer Creek. And learning specifics about this massacre is another thing that lives rent free in my brain. And I am very upset with all the details. Ishi's 6 years old.
Oh my God.
His group is reduced to five people, two men, one young, one old, two women, his mother, his sister, and him. And it's during this encounter that settlers believe they've executed the last of the Yahi.
Devastating.
So we're going to fast forward to 1908, and that's when a band of surveyors come tramping through their camp and everybody scatters. It's this camp that Waterman had previously heard about. Ishi's mom was sick, and some reports say that she seemed to be paralyzed. And knowing that they can't move her, they hide her, hoping that the men coming won't find her. As the men are tramping through their camp, they do indeed find her, see that she is old and sick and likely paralyzed. And so she's forced to watch as they raided their camp and steal everything they could carry.
We've only been hiding up here, you said, for 40 years?
Something like that, yeah. And you come
Wow.
across an old, injured woman, and your instinct is to take everything of value.
That makes me crazy.
Stay
Absolutely
tuned.
crazy.
It gets
Okay.
worse.
Your smile made
Yeah,
it better. You
it's all a
monster.
lie. It's all a lie. So at this point, Ishii's group was down to four people, mother, sister, elderly man, and himself. Ishii's sister and the elderly man disappeared together toward a river. And because Ishi never finds them, he presumes they drowned in the river crossing, trying to escape the surveyors. Ishi circles back to the camp. He's able to get his mom, move her, and his mom dies later, and Ishi spends up to the next 3 years alone.
Wow.
And it's
Okay.
after his mom dies that he starts singeing his hair short as a sign of mourning.
Right. Okay.
So fast forward a couple years to 1911, it's August 29th, and he believes his life is basically over.
Right.
He's starving and he encounters a group of workers at the Charles Ward slaughterhouse in Oroville. And when Ishi's arrested, he firmly believes that the white men are going to kill him because that's all he's ever known of this people group.
I mean, that's kind of a reasonable assumption to make when you look at
Right.
his previous encounters. How would you
Mhm.
not?
And then when word spreads of his capture, and then October 11th, the Lowy Museum of Anthropology opens in San Francisco. And within the next 6 months, 24,000 people come to see Ishi.
So there were, like you said, it was 1910?
Yeah, 1911
Okay.
when
Oh,
when he
1911. Okay.
1911. So, an Indian Affairs agent offers to move him back to Deer Creek or a local reservation. Now, reservations at this point are where tribes are seemingly carelessly grouped without regard to longstanding rivalries and the like. And Ishi decides he wants to live as the white man does and stay in the museum.
Good for him.
Maybe they give him a job as a janitor and he makes $25 a month.
In 1911.
1911. Care to make a guess what that is in today's money?
$200?
Thankfully, the inflation calculator was much more generous,
Oh, good.
$803 in today's money.
But he has room and board.
He has at least board.
Okay.
I don't know if he's making what room and board. Like I'm assuming board would mean a
Like
place to
the
live,
like
or is that
room
the
would be a
food
place to
part?
live, food and like other necessities.
Because I would assume room and board is both, but he has at least a room. Now, is he given
Okay.
food? I don't know. Um, but even still, even if you adjust for rent, maybe add food, that still seems really stinking low.
Oh, I mean it is, but I was just thinking like in that time frame that might not have been the worst pay you could get. You know what I mean?
I mean, look, $800 a month isn't the worst you could do today, but you're going to be working one of 12 jobs.
Yeah.
Now, everyone around him, they start to see the world through his eyes. And for things they've taken for granted, like flushing toilets and running water, clever, right? Doorknobs and safety pins, hilarious. I don't know what made them hilarious, but they are. Telephones, they're neat, but they don't rival the mountains or hawks. And planes, when Ishi saw it, he laughed and asked if a white man flew it.
Fair. I
You
would
know,
too.
you just look at it like that is some caucasity right there.
The audacity.
Yeah.
I wonder if they have a similar story in his culture to like that of Icarus.
Oh, now I wish I could talk to the man. Now, the crazy part, and I feel like this is one of the more brutally sad parts, they go to busy places and he's overcome with just the numbers of people. When they take him to the beach or to a vaudeville show, he's not nearly as impressed with anything there other than the amount of people who came to see it.
That's
And
yeah,
I
okay.
think that speaks purely to we've got a really small tribe and
Mm-hmm.
that number just gets smaller and he can go to a vaudeville show and see hundreds just sitting in a room.
Hundreds of people that aren't part of the same tribe.
Yeah, just hanging out, being relaxed and
Yeah.
groovy. Now, Ishi would display his talents where he'd make arrowheads and bows, and every time he does something when he's on display, this get added to the museum collection. So
Oh,
he's
okay.
continuing to build out their collection for free.
Right.
And he learned a real broken English. And one of the most notable things was he never learned the word goodbye. Instead, he said, "You stay, I go," which I
Hmm.
find kind of adorable.
You know what? That gave me the chills. Um, for so many reasons, but it reminds me of I don't remember what number it was, but the this one listens and this one listens.
Yeah, yeah.
It has that same kind of energy because I like coming from my own background, hearing you stay, I go simply means like I'm afraid of you going. Like don't
Mm,
you won't come back if you go, you know? But
wow.
I could come back.
Yeah,
But it is,
yeah,
like it is actually really charming. It is a really sweet thing to say.
yeah.
Either way you look at it, but it does speak to who he is, speaks to his heart, I think.
And I think there is something pure that comes out when you're learning a new language, when
Hmm.
you understand the premise of something. And so you speak in a way that's maybe not a native speaker, but you communicate the same effect.
Hmm. And sometimes you communicate it better because it is so pure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's also why we love little children learning language, because they say the most incredible things. And you're like, yeah, I will never think of that as anything different. You are completely right, child.
How very dare you is one of my very favorite phrases I learned from a child. How very dare you?
I loved Ani saying, make go.
Okay, I like
And
that one.
I just like, you know what? I will make it go because you're right.
Hmm
I need to make go.
Ethan's was, I can't want that.
Oh,
You can, I can't. About anything. It didn't matter. Vegetables, wearing overalls, putting on his shoes. It didn't matter what it was.
same, kid. Same.
We still say it to this day. I
Mm.
can't want that.
Okay, so back to Ishi. The anthropologist, they're pressuring him to learn more about his culture, his world, because he's the last. So
Right.
they want to record as much as they can. So they pressure to see Ishi's homeland. And the crew take him to the mountains. And they spend a month taking him through the same areas that he grew up in. During this
Okay.
trip, he hears his mother and his sister calling to him, but nobody else can hear them.
That gives me the chills.
Yeah. And towards the end, because they're gone for a month, which is a long camping trip, he's anxious to get back to the museum
Oh, I was gonna say, please tell me he just like deuces and leaves. Like goes back to the mountain where he's happy.
and then just disappears. And that's the
Yeah.
end of the story. If you've enjoyed this
Ta-da!
podcast, no. So a little bit later, 1914, he contracts tuberculosis. And it's during this time Kroper's on sabbatical in New York. He also kind of goes to Europe at during this point, but from what I understand, he was in New York when this part happened. And as Ishi's dying, he confides to Kroger that once he dies, he's afraid he'll be given an autopsy and that he fears if his body doesn't remain intact, his soul won't reach the upper worlds.
Dear God, please tell me they gave him a proper burial. I'm assuming they did not.
I mean, look, I've got pages more to go. Okay.
Okay.
So he knows his friend's wishes, and so he writes a letter on what to do with the remains, saying to handle them as little as possible and cremate them, and saying that, quote, science can go to hell.
Good.
He continues by saying, quote, we propose to stand by our friends. Besides, I cannot believe any scientific value is materially involved when we have hundreds of Indian skeletons that nobody ever comes to study.
Mm. Yeah, leave his alone.
And then he sends his tersely worded letter off.
Good.
Ishi died
Good.
on March 25th, 1916. His last words were, you stay, I go.
Yeah, those were his last words.
Yeah.
Oh, my heart.
And his
Ugh.
real name was never recorded and died with him. The letter
You know
arrived.
what? I love that for him.
I do. I think that was a real beautiful bookend, but I've got pages more to go.
Carry on.
The letter arrived after the autopsy was completed, and medical staff had already preserved his brain.
Of course. So we took him apart against his wishes.
The brain was left on Krober's desk for him on return from his sabbatical like a cruel joke.
I would have lost my ever-loving crap if I were him.
It's at this point Krober had the opportunity to do the right thing. He could have cremated it and united it with the body. Instead,
Mm-hmm.
he sends it to the Smithsonian.
Why? He's the one that said science be damned.
Yeah, but he includes a note. He includes a note. You ready for
Oh,
the
that's
note?
that's nice.
Yeah. The note he includes in this box is Ishi's brain was sent to the National Museum as a gift with the compliments of the University of California. I believe there would be some question as to who was the legal possessor before it was sent to Dr. Hrdlicka. If you would enter as donor the Department of Anthropology of the University of California. I think your record will be as accurate as you can make it. End quote.
So did
So
he forget everything he any
he
whatever. Okay.
defaulted to bastard.
Yeah, he sure did.
And then it's a couple of years later that the California Supreme Court declares California Indians to be citizens.
Of course. Yeah.
So
Of
we've got
course.
that. A black jar labeled Ishi, the last Indian, 1916, contains his cremated remains minus his brain, a bow, and then some arrowheads. Now,
Okay.
there is a research archaeologist named Stephen Shackley who studied the arrow points that Ishi made. Because, of course, we have those at the University of Berkeley, at the Berkeley's Hearst Museum of Anthropology. And in studying those, he discovered that Ishi apparently wasn't the last full-blooded Yahi or Yana after all,
How would you learn that from studying those?
because I'm assuming they're not done quite in the Yahi style.
Oh, okay. I was thinking maybe others were done later. Like that makes more sense. Okay.
So Shackley said that Ishi, who's found starving and afraid near Oroville in 1911, was a mixed Indian blood, finding that it revises Ishi's famous history that many Californians learned reading Ishi and the Two Worlds by Theodora Kroger. Now, Shackley says that in light of this new evidence, teachers educating children about California history should be more aware of the complexity of Ishi's situation. It's more complex than Kroger imagined.
Of
Now,
course.
Theodora's book
Excuse me.
was simplistic and not based on hard research because she's just the wife of an academic and she's not out in the field and comparing notes and making sure every line is accurate.
She's just writing what she sees, and you
Yeah,
can't fault her for that. Like,
you can't, but you would hope. I mean, you look at like the artists who record their own autobiography, and if
yeah,
they're worth their salt, they actually say, and thank you to, and they list the family members who contributed to their narrative and made sure that their account was collaborated by others in the family.
that's true. Yeah.
And I don't think she had that.
Well, I would expect she didn't.
Yeah. Now, according to Shackley, Ishi's born into an extended family that, in order to perpetuate life, was forced to intermarry with outsiders, with like enemies,
Okay.
because they lived adjacent to their enemies, the Yana, who were in the Lassen foothills. And we know, at the beginning of the story, I said that there was four subgroups, and each had their own dialect, territory, and culture. Shackley goes on to say that we always thought that Ishi was a survivor who was extremely adaptive, and now we know he was even more adaptive because he was the product of a society that had to adapt to a situation that was not part of its cultural ideology. And then he says Ishi didn't talk about his ancestors because his religious beliefs prevented him from doing that. But that's my job as the archaeologist, and Ishi would have wanted the truth known,
Okay. It's
which,
interesting that she would say that, but I
yeah, I
mean,
mean, to look at it and be like, oh, I see this influence. Okay. Because apparently they had a huge, I guess I didn't put this in my notes, but they had a huge taboo on incest. And so once the group dwindled down, you wouldn't go to a sibling to
right.
partner up with. You would reach out to another tribe.
That makes sense. So
Yeah.
so they have some understanding of how genetics works.
Yeah. More than,
Wild.
say, a Habsburg.
Hey, you don't get that chin for nothing.
Ugh, thank God. Um, Now, 1984, Congress established the Ishi Wilderness to honor his legacy, which seems like a beautiful thing, and that is in his home range. The National Museum of the American Indian Act of 1989 mandated that the Smithsonian Institute inventory, document, and if requested, repatriate culturally affiliated human remains and funerary objects to federally recognized in Native American tribes. which sounds good on its face. But we're going to have some problems with the federally recognized part. The
Yeah, because
19
very few at that point are federally recognized. And
Yeah.
additionally, if he's the last of a dwindling tribe, where would it go in the first place?
Ding ding, winner winner chicken dinner. The 1996 amendment established deadlines for the distribution of summaries and inventories of human remains and associated funerary objects, which are to be completed and submitted to Native groups by June 1st, 1998. Spring 1997, four federally recognized Maidu tribes, the Enterprise Tribe, Moortown Tribe, the Berry Creek Tribe, and the Mechoopda tribe unite and form
Mechoopda.
Mechoopda. Okay, thank you. Because I
You're
was like,
welcome.
I feel like I can get close.
You did. You did really well.
They unite and they form the Butte County Native American Cultural Committee and elect Mr. Art Engel as its chair. May 14th, 1997, the BCNACC passes Resolution 9701 authorizing the same group with the long acronym to support the Forest Service, City of Oroville, Chamber of Commerce, Butte County Board of Supervisors, and Native American elders to, quote, locate and place Ishi's remains and spirit to his native homeland. So they unite, lock hands, and say, Red Rover, send Ishi right over.
Can that be the title?
We'll see. We'll see. June 6th, 1997, Los Angeles Times article by Mary Curtius alerts UCSF officials to the possibility that the brain was not cremated with Ishi's other remains. UCSF Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs initiates an internal investigation by a pathologist and research historian. October of 97, Berkeley investigation fails to find further information of the brain's removal. Letter sent to Arthur Engel and the BCNACC. So we've got Berkeley doing a search, and we have UCSF.
Okay.
June 16th, 1998, the SF investigation leads to the Smithsonian, but the director of the American Indian Program tells UCSF representative that the brain is, quote, old folklore and doesn't exist, unquote.
You had a note. You had a note that said it was his brain.
It's just folklore. It's just folklore. There's no note, no receipts, but put a pin in
Okay.
that.
Okay.
December 16th, 1998, UC research historian meets at UCSF with Oren Starn, Associate Professor of Anthropology, Duke University, to discuss the research on the whereabouts of Ishi's brain. So we've got the big people talking big things. From December of 1998 to January of 1999, Oren Starn recontacts the Smithsonian, finds new documents in the Bancroft Library, proof that Kroeber shipped the brain in 1917.
So
They're
it's got the
coming with
receipts.
receipts.
Good for them.
January 27th, 1999, presence of the brain at the Smithsonian is confirmed personally in a meeting between Thomas Killian of the Smithsonian Repatriation Office and Oren Starn.
Good.
1999, April 5th, California state legislature holds an oversight hearing on the subject of Ishi's remains and the disposition of Native American remains and artifacts. The article in The Guardian states an anthropologist who befriended Ishi left a record saying his brain had been preserved but didn't say where. In the years that followed, dozens of Ishi books, plays, films, doctoral dissertations, and even a website were produced, but local scientists locked track of his brain until early this year. It was rediscovered in February in Washington Smithsonian Institution, along with 300 other brains, nine of them Indians, having been there since 1917. The museum protested that its experts had known of the brain's whereabouts all along, but, quote, nobody asked.
That's not what happened.
I mean, we have quotes.
Okay.
Now, the Smithsonian has provoked Native American anger after it refused to return the brain to the visiting tribe, the Maidu, who live near Ishi's hunting ground. Later on, it states this week, the Maidu presented a petition backed by the state's legislature demanding the museum report its progress within 30 days. And Darren Steinberg, a member of the legislature, is quoted as saying, "Find a way and find it quickly,"
Good,
which I
good.
can only hope he said, as exasperated as I did.
I suspect he did.
Huh? Later on in 1999, the Smithsonian designates the Redding, Rancheria, and Pitt River tribes as Ishi's closest living relatives and the recipients of Ishi's remains. August 10th, 2000, Ishi's reunited remains are returned to his Aboriginal homeland near Mount Lassen and laid to rest. This is just one day short of 89 years since Ishi had entered the historical record.
Wow. That is wild.
And it was so much work to make that happen that it should
Yeah,
never have been that big of a fight.
it shouldn't have been a thing to begin with.
Yeah. Recent work on Ishi documents how his relatives are still alive, how Native communities are growing, and the paradigm of calling Ishi the last Indian sets up a dangerous framework. It erases the existing cultures, it ignores the continuations of their traditions, it romanticizes the Indian cosplay that is still prevalent without honoring the cultures that are still here.
Yep.
In 2011, UC Berkeley hosted the Ishi conference where Mary Lynn Salvador, the director of UC Berkeley's Phoebe A. Hearst Museum of Anthropology, answered questions about a century of Ishi. And in this, she stated something that I feel like I can leave off this story. I can close out. And she says in 1911, American Indians were not citizens, but wards of the federal government, with few exceptions, Ishi being one. The representation and interpretation of Native American culture in museums was done by European American anthropologists who often objectified members of these cultural groups. At that time, most anthropologists assumed that American Indians would be extinct culturally and physically within a few decades. Today, thanks to the work of American Indian museum directors, anthropologists, historians, writers, artists, and other academics, museums offer a more nuanced understanding of the history and present the Native American experience in all its diversity. Rather than being objects of interpretation, Native Americans are collaborating on or leading the interpretation of their cultures.
I love that.
And I've got pictures.
Oh, good. That is exactly what I thought he looked like.
Hmm. Now, describe to those who are consuming this in an audio format.
He's got a long, like it almost looks like a hoodie you would wear with leggings. It goes down to just above his calf. Maybe a scarf. Maybe he's wearing a scarf. In this picture, it's black and white. His hair is this is obviously taken just after they found him because his hair is still very short.
Mhm.
Um, he is carrying himself in a way that's body language suggests he is very much still trying to protect himself, but is he wants human interaction.
Yeah.
And he's got a sweet, wonderful face. Okay, in the next picture, it's a sepia tone.
Hmm.
His hair is grown back. For as old as he might have been in this photo, he looks very healthy. Um, Big broad shoulders and a lovely face. I would like to sit at his feet and listen to him talk.
This is my favorite
Yep.
photo of him.
Okay, the only thing I could say about this photo is he is wearing exactly the shirt your grandfather would wear.
Hmm.
It's got the button down. It's black and white. His hair's pulled back. He's smiling, and you can see the smile with his eyes. He's got Got the eye wrinkles that are so, so charming on men.
Yeah, you can tell he
Oh,
told a joke.
yeah, he's very pleased with himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. This must have been shortly after they found him in this photo that she's showing me the next photo. It's I'm not sure what he's holding, but my assumption is it's whatever remains of the outfit he had on.
Yeah, but
His
he's
face is much darker than his body in that
gaunt.
photo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
he is gaunt.
it
Yes.
could just be the way the light is. I don't fully know, and I feel like black and white photos can sometimes be misleading.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
he would make incredible arrowheads, and one of the things he would do would be taking like that being, blue glass and flinting it into an arrowhead shape or, any even clear glass.
That's
But
beautiful.
they were absolutely incredible specimens. And when I was at Wairika looking at this historical marker, they had some really breathtaking examples of his arrowhead work, and I really wish I had taken pictures of those because they were incredible.
They are incredible. There's probably 10 or 11 in this page and each one is different. Um, a different shape, a different design, probably for different purposes, but each one is simply gorgeous.
Yeah. But that is the story of Ishi, known as the last Indian, but I'm putting an asterisk, the last Yahi Indian, because he was not the last Indian. We still have them. They are still here.
And they still have a very important story to share. That's beautiful. Well
Yep.
done.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
That was one of the stories where I was like, but tell me more about the court case. Tell me more about why I'm angry at the Smithsonian. And in doing this, all I could think back of, I could hear like us getting upset at Prince Dajjat Almayehu and
Mm-hmm.
when we talked about how the British still have his body and how we were pretty upset that people would keep human remains. And then to think about
Because they
Kroger saying
shouldn't.
he's a friend and there's no medical value because nobody's studying them.
Yeah. Well, and it shouldn't matter. I mean, if they're it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your spiritual belief is. If you have a friend of a different spiritual belief and they will not go to their afterlife without certain things being done, you help those things
Yeah,
happen because that's how they believe. That's not for you or me or anybody else to decide how someone makes it to the next place. You know what I
if
mean?
they need coins over their eyes, you put coins on their eyes. If they
I
want
will
their
build the
hands
pyre.
crossed, yeah, you do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. That was beautiful. Thank you.
My pleasure. And part of me's bummed you at least knew his name, but the other part is at least excited that you knew his name. Like, I was hoping to bring something totally fresh, but
I'll have to look. I think I actually have one of the books about him. But
okay.
I'm wondering if I'm getting my stories confused, obviously now because I was definitely wrong about my details, but I thought he was a child when they found him. So maybe I'm thinking of someone else.
Or it could be that you remembered that he was six during a massacre and that part stuck out with you, but you conflated how it tied in.
That's very, very real because like I said, it was years, probably 25 years ago that I had heard any part of his story. So,
Mm,
thank you.
my pleasure.
Yep,
Um,
probably when the Smithsonian was fighting to keep his brain. Yeah.
I mean, look, it's just gross. It's just gross. If you've got body parts in your junk
Give them
drawer,
back.
in your basement, um, hell, on the wall, maybe not.
Forget what's about to come out of my mouth, but if you have body parts, give them back. Unless, of course, you happen to have Napoleon's penis, in which case, hang
Weird
it on the
hill to
wall.
die on.
You knew I was going to make the comment. You should have just prepared yourself.
I'm gonna drink some wine about it, is what I'm gonna do.
Also, I'm not about that, but he really did lose it, and it did take a grand tour of the world at one point in history before it returned. So there's that.
There is that. If you're thinking, hot damn, this thing was a ride from start to finish, it wasn't a good ride. It was a well-told ride, and it was a
Yes, it
ride
was.
worth telling. But I need to go hug a cat. I need to go
Mm-hmm.
look at a tree. I need to go understand that there's probably a white dude flying that plane, but it's not cooler than the mountain or the hawk.
That's facts.
In which case, give us a rating on the
Mm-hmm.
podcast app of your choice because that helps other people who like the weird things like this that you listen to. And come back next week, and we've got another crazy story for you, I'm sure. I might even pause my face long enough for Angie to tell a story. We'll see.
Live your truth.
And on that note, goodbye.
Goodbye.